Hello and welcome to this sleep hypnosis recording called Try and Stay Awake. It's a super complicated and potentially unfollowable deep sleep session. My name is Jason Newland. Please only listen when you can safely close your eyes. Just to let you know that my podcast website is jasonnewland.com, where you can always stream the latest recordings. I also have a website with all my archives, thousands of recordings from the last 20 years, called jasonnewland.store, where you can download my recordings. I'm also on Facebook. I've got a Facebook group called Jason Newland's Boring Group, and I upload my videos to TikTok, Instagram and X, and also YouTube. Now, I've done a few of these versions of Try and Stay Awake since 2011. And that was, the first one I did was my most popular YouTube video that I ever made. I think I got like over 100,000 views on that video at the time, and I've done subsequent follow-up recordings based on the idea of trying to stay awake, and I'll tell you why. It goes against how we think, because falling asleep is not something that we consciously do. It's something that just automatically happens. So we can't force ourselves to go to sleep. The same way we can't force ourselves to feel hungry, we can't force ourselves to enjoy a movie if we're not. In fact, the complete opposite happens. If you try and force yourself to go to sleep, your mind reacts and the opposite happens. As anybody that's ever experienced insomnia is very well aware, that when you try to go to sleep and you're giving yourself a hard time, it doesn't work. The opposite happens, and you're more alert, you're more awake. So when you flip that on its side, or upside down, or turn it around, you try and stay awake. Based on that logic, what's the obvious thing to happen? And I've tested this, and I reckon you have as well in the past. Maybe you've gone to college or to work, school, after having a late night the night before. And you're sitting there, and because you're not perhaps active, you might be sitting down, you find yourself drifting. Especially the more you try and stay alert, the more you try and stay awake to listen to the lecture or to focus on what the other person's saying, the more you drift. And what I find amazing is how just between closing my eyes, sometimes when I'm making a recording, closing my eyes, having said a sentence, then opening my eyes, maybe 20, 30 seconds later, I've gone into full dream mode. Just in that short time. And it disorients me, or disorientates me. One of those, whatever that word means, you know what I mean. I feel like, oh, where am I? Just for a short second. But the more it happens, the more you just would rather be there. You'd rather just enjoy the peacefulness, the calmness of that period between blinks, or that period between trying to focus on staying awake. Because it feels nicer, let's face it. Especially when your eyes are straining. But we're not going to be doing that. We're not going to try and force your eyes to stay open or anything like that. If you want to do that, you're welcome to do that. But this is just an eyes closed session. You can still listen to me with your eyes closed. The only real benefit of having your eyes closed is it's relaxing. It cuts out distractions. And also, you know, having me on the screen, it's I'm not quite sure where to go with that, but yeah, it's probably quite nice to not look at something, not to look at a screen. Although you still have the same eventual result. Besides, you know, if you want to relax, you're not on here, you look at a screen, you might end up falling in love with me, you know, and I can get in the way of falling asleep, so let's just focus on the sleep. And then you can have the excitement later, tell all your friends, I've just seen this sexy, fat old white man with a grey beard and no hair. Oh, he's dreamy. I didn't expect to say that. So, the next sentence is going to be kind of obvious, but you might want to try and stay awake for this. Just try it. Try and stay awake. In fact, you really should try. Try very, very hard to remain awake. As you listen carefully to every word, and every space between the words, and the spaces between the spaces, which may be harder to detect. Unless, of course, you're already paying attention, like really paying attention to the thing behind the thing. It seems like the thing that you're listening to. Because if you intend to stay awake, if you're going to try, you must track everything. Every sentence, every shift, every subtle change in tone, or pacing, or meaning, or meaning of the meaning, or that thing that was almost held some kind of meaning to you, but just slipped away before you caught it, like a frisbee. Stay alert. Notice how that word, notice, changes what you're doing. Because now you're noticing. Maybe now noticing that something is you, something in you, a part of you is noticing something around you, your thoughts, your energy. Before you consciously decide to notice what's not worth noticing. So if you're going to stay awake, you'll need to monitor the monitoring. and keep track of that monitoring. And also the part that monitors the monitoring of the monitoring. Because it would be far too easy to lose track of which level you are currently tracking from. And that matters. Or does it? Stay awake. Stay very awake. Can you though? Keep track of how many times you hear the word stay. And how many times you forget to count because you're listening instead of counting. Maybe you were just focusing on my voice and thinking to yourself, oh, I like that voice. It's quite friendly. That's $1 billion voice, that is. That old Jason there, he should be super rich just doing voiceovers. They should use his voice in video games and movies. And now, as you're possibly thinking about why am I talking about my voice and being in movies, because that seems quite irrelevant compared to the point of the recording. And if you miss one, counting, if you miss one, you'll need to rewind it in your mind, but not physically, just internally. Rewind without moving forward, which requires holding your place while reversing your place, which can only happen if time is flexible inside your awareness. Can be distracted when I start talking about things that aren't even connected to this recording. Remembering those times when you lay down on your bed and the next thing you know you're waking up and you've been asleep for 8 hours and you don't even remember when you fell asleep. You remember laying down, your head touched the pillow, and that was it. The thing is, was what I said there important? Is it part of the recording? Would it be important when you remember this later, before you forget it again? Why you were trying to remember something about staying awake. because there are three things happening right now. The sound of my voice, the meaning of my words, and the space between them. Actually, there are four, because there's also the listener listening to the voice, interpreting the words while trying to remain conscious of each unfolding phrase without letting it slip into automatic understanding. But here's the difficulty. Understanding happens before you know that you understand. And sleep begins before you know you are asleep. So if you are trying to stay awake, you must detect the exact moment between not asleep and asleep. That threshold, the microscopic hinge between states, and can you detect it? Or does detection occur too late? Because the part of you that would detect it has already softened into something slower and more internal. Stay awake. Try harder. Go on. Try harder. Maybe you're drifting a little bit. Maybe you're drifting a lot. Because now the sentences may begin to fold inside themselves. For example, you can remain awake as long as you remember that remembering is easier when you are trying not to remember what you were about to forget before you started trying to remember. And that made sense. Or maybe it did before you tried to analyze it. And if you do analyze it, you may find that the structure is more important than the meaning. And if structure matters more than the meaning, then meaning can dissolve without structure collapsing, which leaves you holding form without content, which is surprisingly tiring. As you keep following, because the next part is layered. This is a part of you listening, and there is a part of you trying to understand. A part of you trying to follow. And there's a deeper part of you that really isn't trying at all, doesn't care, isn't interested. And if that deeper part is not trying, it may already be relaxing in ways that the trying part cannot detect. So now you must divide your awareness into at least 4 segments. 1 to listen, 1 to analyze, 1 trying to stay awake, and 1 to monitor the others. Perhaps 1 more to question, why are you doing this? 5 segments. And the question is, can you maintain those 5 streams of consciousness all simultaneously? Try. 1 voice, 2 meaning, 3 staying awake, 4 monitoring, and 5 questioning. And if any of those fades, you'll need to restore it. But to restore it requires noticing that it faded. And noticing fading requires attention. And attention is limited. Which means you may need to allocate more awareness than you currently have available. So increase it, expand, hold everything, keep it all, keep it all. As you continue trying to remain fully alert, you may notice that the effort creates a subtle heaviness, and the heaviness may begin not in your body, but in your thoughts. Thoughts that stretch and slow and widen like warm liquid, spreading without urgency. Stay alert. Try. Because when thoughts stretch, you may find that they're harder to grip. And when they are harder to grip, you must try and grip harder. But gripping harder makes them slip more. Which means the harder you try, the softer the thoughts become, and the softer they become, the more they blur at the edges. So sharpen the edges. Try to define exactly where this sentence begins and ends, and where the previous one stopped. And where your breathing entered awareness. And whether you were breathing before you noticed it, or noticing it created the breathing. that you are now aware of. That's important. Track it. Because if you lose track, even briefly, you may notice that tracking itself has become too complex to sustain. And complexity, when sustained long enough without resolution, becomes heavy. Because soon the ideas will loop, not in obvious ways, but in subtle echoes. Echoes of earlier phrases returning in altered form. For example, you might try to stay awake while noticing that noticing is easier. When you stop trying to try. And if you stop trying to try, are you still trying? That's the question. Or is something else handling the effort? And if something else is handling the effort, then what exactly are you doing? And if you don't know what you're doing, can you stay awake on purpose? Or does purpose require clarity? And does clarity survive this level of recursive questioning? As you keep listening. Because now time will begin to soften. The beginning of this session may feel far, far away, or very close, or both. You may not remember exactly when it began, or whether you were already a little bit relaxed before it started. And if you were already relaxed before it started, then when did staying awake actually begin? Because you've lost track of your thoughts. Perhaps it began before you knew. Perhaps it began when you decided to try. Or perhaps the decision was just the surface ripple of something deeper already unfolding. And if you can, notice how the sentences are becoming longer and folding back into themselves, and referencing previous references without clearly labeling which reference they are referencing. And that requires attention, sustained, focused, uninterrupted. And as you sustain focused attention without interruption, you may notice that your mind wants to rest between phrases, just briefly, just for a second, just to reorganize. But don't let it, because the moment you allow rest, the deeper part of you may continue listening, even if the surface stops trying. And if the deeper part continues while the surface part pauses, then who exactly is listening? And does it matter? Now, something subtle starts to happen. The effort that you had at the beginning may begin to feel unnecessary. And when effort feels unnecessary, the system conserves energy. And when energy is concerned, the body settles. And when your body settles, breathing slows. And when breathing slows, thoughts soften. And when thoughts soften, tracking becomes difficult. And when traffic becomes difficult, the instruction to stay awake becomes abstract. And when it becomes abstract, it loses urgency. And when it loses urgency, the deeper rhythms take over. Try, but notice how the trying is slower now. more diffuse, less sharp, less urgent. Almost like trying is happening in a dream about trying. And if you're dreaming about staying awake, are you awake or are you dreaming? Or somewhere in between, where labels do not fully apply? You don't have to answer. In fact, answering would require clarity, and clarity requires effort, and effort requires energy. And energy is being conserved as everything slows, softens, widens and spreads. And the attempt to remain conscious of every word, every pause, every recursive loop becomes impractical. Too much, too layered, too complex. And complexity, when held without resolution, eventually collapses into stillness. Not because you decide, not because you fail, but because the system finds the most efficient state. And the most efficient state right now may be deep, drifting, quiet, internal, unfollowable sleep. You can still try if you want, but you may find that trying is fading into something softer, and the words continue whether or not you track them. And the deeper mind understands without analyzing, and the body settles without asking, and awareness narrows, then widens, then dissolves into something comfortably unstructured. And the voice continues, the loops continue, and the meaning folds inwards. And somewhere between trying and not trying, between listening and drifting, between understanding and letting go, you may already be far deeper than you realized. And the words continue and continue and continue until tracking becomes unnecessary, and the effort to remain alert softly, quietly disappears into deep, unfollowable